The notice was printed on bright pink paper, impossible to ignore against a faded bulletin board in Sterling University's financial aid office. Isabel Chen had walked past it 3 times before the words actually registered in her exhausted brain. Surrogate mother needed. Compensation, $10 million. Serious inquiries only. Contact, Hawthorne Legal Services. Isabel stopped mid-step, nearly causing the student behind her to collide into her back. $10 million. The number seemed obscene, impossible. Surely it was a scam, some sick joke, or worse, human trafficking disguised as legitimate business. She should walk away. She would walk away. But her hand was already pulling out her phone, photographing the flyer, because $10 million would solve every single problem in her life. At 23 years old, Isabel Chen was drowning. Her mother's stage for cancer treatments had depleted their savings and put them over $300,000 in debt. The insurance company had denied the latest experimental treatment as not medically necessary, despite the oncologist's insistence it could extend her mother's life by years. Isabel was in her final year of pre-med, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while working 3 jobs and sleeping an average of 4 hours a night. Her younger brother, Tommy, was 17 and about to apply to colleges he'd never be able to afford. The math was brutal and simple. Her mother would die without treatment they couldn't pay for. Tommy's future would be sacrifice of medical debt. And Isabel's dream of becoming a doctor would remain exactly that, a dream. $10 million could change all of it. That evening, in her cramped studio apartment that she shared with 2 roommates, Isabel stared at the phone number she'd saved. It was nearly midnight. She had an organic chemistry exam in the morning, and a shift at the campus library starting at 6 a.m. She should sleep. Instead, she dialed. A professional female voice answered on the second ring. Hawthorne Legal Services. How may I direct your call? I'm calling about the surrogacy advertisement. One moment, please. Classical music played for exactly 30 seconds before a different voice came on the line. Male, cultured, with an edge of exhaustion that matched Isabel's own. This is Marcus Hawthorne. You're calling about the surrogacy arrangement. Yes. Is this legitimate? Completely. Are you a student at Sterling University? Yes. Pre-med. But I need to know why so much money. What's the catch? A pause. Then, no catch. My client requires discretion, medical excellence, and someone who understands this is strictly a business arrangement. The compensation reflects the significance of what we're asking, which is carry a child to term, sign away all parental rights, never contact my client or the child after birth. In exchange, $10 million, paid in installments throughout the pregnancy, with the final payment upon successful delivery. Isabel's heart hammered. Why not use a professional surrogacy agency? We tried. My client's particular requirements have made traditional avenues difficult. We need someone intelligent, healthy, with excellent genetics, and willing to sign an ironclad NDA. The advertisement was placed specifically at Sterling because we need someone of your academic caliber. You don't even know if I qualify. Don't I? You photographed the flyer at 2:47 p.m., researched surrogate scams for 40 minutes, and waited until now to call, which suggests you're desperate enough to consider this despite your reservations. You're likely facing significant financial pressure, and you're clearly intelligent enough to recognize this is unusual but potentially legitimate. Isabel's blood ran cold. You've been tracking me? No. I've been tracking everyone who photographed that flyer. You're the 16th person to call. The first 15 failed to pass our preliminary screening. What screening? GPA below 3.8, health issues, criminal records, or inability to provide proper documentation. You, however, have a 4.0 GPA, no health issues on record, and a verified identity. So I'll ask directly, are you interested in learning more? Every instinct screamed this was wrong. But Isabel thought about her mother, pale and exhausted from chemo, about Tommy, who'd been accepted to MIT but couldn't go without scholarships they'd already been denied, about her own medical school applications, all to state schools she might afford, knowing her dream schools were impossible fantasies. Yes, she whispered, I'm interested. Good. Meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm sending you an address. Come alone. Bring identification and medical records. If you tell anyone about this meeting, the offer is void. Understood. Understood. The call ended. 3 seconds later, a text arrived with an address in the city's most expensive business district. Isabel didn't sleep that night. She researched surrogacy laws, compensation norms, typical arrangements paid $40,000 to $80,000, not millions, and tried to imagine what kind of person would offer such an astronomical sum. A billionaire with fertility issues? A celebrity wanting privacy? Someone with a genetic condition requiring specific donor requirements? At 9:30 a.m., after bombing her organic chemistry exam because her exhausted brain couldn't focus, Isabel stood outside a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Manhattan. The building's directory listed dozens of law firms, investment companies, and corporate headquarters. Hawthorne Legal Services occupied the entire 40th floor. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. The doors opened onto a reception area that screamed wealth, marble floors, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The receptionist was immaculate, professional, and unsurprised by Isabel's arrival in her threadbare coat and scuffed shoes. Ms. Chun, Mr. Hawthorne is expecting you. Conference room 3. Isabel followed the assistant down a hallway, her reflection in the polished surfaces showing exactly how out of place she was. The conference room was intimidating. A massive table, leather chairs, and a wall of windows that made her feel like she was floating above the city. Marcus Hawthorne was younger than she'd expected. Perhaps 40, impeccably dressed, with the kind of polished appearance that came from old money and excellent tailoring. He stood when she entered, gesturing to a chair. Ms. Chun, thank you for coming. Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Isabel sat, keeping her backpack on her lap, like a shield. Let's skip the pleasantries. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus's lips twitched, approval, maybe, at her directness. My client is seeking a surrogate mother for a child conceived via IVF. The embryo will be implanted. You would carry the pregnancy to term under the best medical care available, and upon birth, you would relinquish all parental rights. Who's the client? That information will be disclosed if you pass our initial screening and agree to proceed. What I can tell you is that he's a prominent businessman who requires absolute discretion. Yes. The embryo was created using his genetic material and a donor egg from a carefully selected donor who's already been compensated. So I'm just the incubator. You're providing a critical service for extraordinary compensation. The arrangement is straightforward. $10 million, paid as follows. $1 million upon contract signing and successful implantation, monthly payments of $500,000 throughout the pregnancy, and a final payment of $4 million upon successful delivery of a healthy infant. Isabel's mind reeled at the numbers. And if something goes wrong, miscarriage, complications, you'll still receive compensation for time and medical procedures undergone. The contract includes comprehensive medical coverage, life insurance with you as beneficiary, and legal protections. This is legitimate. Ms. Chun, my client simply wants a child and is willing to pay handsomely for certainty and discretion. Why so much money? Because he understands what he's asking. 9 months of your life, your body, your health, the emotional toll, the sacrifice, and he can afford to compensate appropriately. Marcus slid a folder across the table. This is a preliminary agreement. Take it home, read it, have a lawyer review it if you wish, though you'll need to sign an NDA first, which prevents you from disclosing the terms to anyone except legal counsel. Isabel stared at the folder. What happens if I say no? You walk out of here, never hear from us again, and we find someone else. There's no pressure, Ms. Chun. This is a choice. Some choice. You clearly know I'm desperate. Desperate enough to consider this, yes, but not desperate enough to agree to something harmful, which tells me you're exactly the kind of person we need. Someone who understands consequences and makes difficult decisions carefully. Isabel opened the folder. The contract was dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out. Exclusive rights, no parental claims, binding arbitration, absolute confidentiality. I need time to think. You have 48 hours. After that, we move to the next candidate. Isabel took the folder in the NDA, signed a letter after reading it twice, and left the building feeling like she just stepped out of a fever dream. That evening, she sat at her mother's bedside in the small 2-bedroom apartment they'd moved to after selling their house to pay medical bills. Linda Chun looked impossibly frail, her once vibrant features hollowed by illness and treatment. "How was your exam, sweetheart?" "Fine," Isabel lied. "Mom, if you could do anything, I mean anything, to get better, would you?" Linda's tired eyes studied her daughter. "Not if it hurt you, baby. Never if it hurt you. But what if it didn't? What if there was a way to get the treatment you need to give Tommy a real future, to fix everything?" "Isabel, what are you talking about?" "Nothing. Just hypothetically. Hypothetically, I'd want you to live your own life. You've sacrificed enough for us." But she was dying. The doctor had given her 6 months, maybe a year with the treatment insurance wouldn't cover. And Tommy, brilliant, talented Tommy, would end up at community college instead of MIT because they couldn't afford anything else. Isabel spent the next 2 days researching obsessively. She found Marcus Hawthorne's background: prestigious law school, career representing high-net-worth individuals, impeccable reputation. She researched surrogacy contracts, spoke, very hypothetically, to a law student she knew, and spent hours staring at that number, $10 million. On the morning of the 48th hour, she called Marcus Hawthorne. "I'll do it, but I have conditions." "I'm listening." "I want to meet your client, face to face, before I sign anything permanent." A pause. "That's unusual. It's non-negotiable. If I'm carrying his child, I deserve to know who he is. I'll sign whatever NDA is necessary, but I won't be a transaction. I'm a person." Another pause, longer this time. "Then I'll arrange it. Tonight, 7 p.m. Same building, but top floor. Come prepared to meet someone who values his privacy above almost everything else." The call ended, and Isabel realized she was shaking. That evening, she dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress her mother had bought her for medical school interviews. She borrowed makeup from her roommate, trying to look less like an exhausted student and more like someone worthy of a $10 million contract. The elevator to the penthouse required a special key. When the doors opened, Isabel stepped not into an office, but into a private residence. Sleek, modern, with art that probably cost more than her lifetime earnings. A man stood at the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the city lights. "Ms. Chun." He turned, and Isabel forgot how to breathe. He was perhaps 35, with the kind of masculine beauty that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp features, dark hair, eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her tuition, but it was his presence that struck her. Intensity, power, barely controlled emotion. "I'm Alexander Winters." He extended a hand. "Thank you for coming." Isabel shook his hand, trying to keep her own from trembling. "You're the client?" "Yes." He gestured to a seating area. "Would you like something to drink?" "I'd like to understand why a billionaire CEO needs to pay someone $10 million to carry his child." Alexander's jaw tightened. He poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter, not offering her any, and took a long drink before responding. 3 years ago, I was married. My wife, Catherine, was pregnant with our first child. We tried for years, finally succeeded with IVF. She was 5 months along when she was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. The doctor said they could treat it, but it might harm the baby. She refused treatment. His voice went rough. She died 6 weeks after our daughter was born. The cancer had spread too far by then. Isabel's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." Our daughter, Emma, died 3 days later. Complications from the premature birth and Catherine's illness. I lost everything in 2 months. He drained the whiskey. Before Catherine died, we created multiple embryos for IVF. They're in storage, and I can't let them remain frozen forever. They're all I have left of her. But I also can't handle a traditional surrogacy arrangement. The agencies want involvement, relationships, connections. I can't do that. I just want the child. Our child. So you're offering $10 million to avoid emotional entanglement. I'm offering $10 million for excellent care, discretion, and the understanding that when this is over, we part ways. You get money that will change your life. I get a child. It's business. Pregnancy isn't business, Mr. Winters. It's intimate and complicated, which is exactly why the compensation is so high. I understand what I'm asking. He refilled his glass. Marcus told me about you. Pre-med student. For .0 GPA. Mother with cancer. Younger brother with potential. You need money I can provide. I need a service you can offer. We can help each other. Isabel stood, walking to the window, looking down at the city lights. Somewhere down there, her mother was dying. Tommy was filling out financial aid forms for schools he couldn't afford. And she was standing in a penthouse, contemplating selling 9 months of her life for enough money to save them all. If I do this, she said slowly, I have more conditions. Name them. My mother gets the experimental treatment. Immediately. Your money pays for it directly, not as part of my compensation. I want it in a separate agreement. Alexander nodded. Done. My brother's education. Full ride to MIT. All 4 years guaranteed, regardless of what happens with the pregnancy. Agreed. And monthly updates on the child. Not visits, not contact. Just photos. Confirmation they're healthy and safe. I need to know that what I did mattered. Alexander's expression hardened. No contact. That was not contact. Updates. Through a third party. Anonymous. I'll never reach out, never interfere. But I can't carry a child for 9 months and then spend the rest of my life wondering if they're okay. I need to know they're thriving. That's my price for the rest of your terms. They stared at each other across the penthouse, wills clashing. 2 desperate people negotiating the most important transaction of their lives. Finally, Alexander nodded. Annual updates. Through Marcus. No identifying information about me or the child's location. Just confirmation of health and well-being. Deal. Then we have an agreement, Miss Chun. Isabel, if I'm carrying your child, you can use my first name. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Isabel, and you can call me Alexander, though after the implantation, we probably won't see each other again. Probably for the best. But as Isabel left the penthouse that night, contract in hand, she couldn't shake the image of Alexander's face when he'd spoken about his wife. The raw grief, the desperate hope. This wasn't just business for him, no matter what he claimed. And she suspected it wouldn't be just business for her either. The IVF implantation took place in a private medical facility that looked more like a luxury spa than a hospital. Dr. Sarah Chun, no relation, but the coincidence made Isabel smile, was a renowned fertility specialist who'd signed so many NDAs she barely blinked at the arrangement. This is actually more straightforward than many surrogacies, Dr. Chun explained as she prepared Isabel for the procedure. The embryo is healthy. Your uterus is in excellent condition, and we'll monitor you closely throughout. Success rate for a first implantation is about 40%, but given the quality of the embryo and her health, I'm optimistic. Isabel lay on the examination table, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about what was happening. A child, Alexander's child, his late wife's genetic legacy, was about to become part of her body. Nervous? Dr. Chen asked gently. Terrified? That's normal. But Isabel, you should know, what you're doing is incredibly generous. Whatever your reasons, you're giving someone a chance at family. That matters. The procedure itself was quick and painless. Afterward, Isabel rested in a private recovery room, under strict instructions to avoid strenuous activity for 48 hours. Marcus Hawthorne appeared with the first payment, a cashier's check for $1 million. This is real, Isabel whispered, staring at more money than she'd ever imagined holding. It's real. The rest comes in installments as contracted. Your mother's treatment begins tomorrow. I've already arranged everything with Sloan Kettering, and I've contacted MIT regarding your brother's scholarship. Tears burned Isabel's eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. You're earning this. 2 weeks later, the blood test confirmed what Isabel had already suspected from the morning nausea and exhaustion. She was pregnant. The news was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. A child was growing inside her, a child she would carry for 9 months and then give away, a child who would save her mother, fund her brother's future, and change her life forever. Alexander requested a meeting to confirm the pregnancy. They met again in his penthouse, the atmosphere strained and formal. "Congratulations," Isabel said awkwardly. "You're going to be a father." Alexander's hand trembled slightly as he set down his glass. "Thank you. How are you feeling?" "Nauseous, exhausted, and emotional. So basically exactly like the doctor said I'd feel. If you need anything..." "I know. Marcus gave me the emergency numbers." She pulled out a list. "I have questions about the pregnancy plan. Diet, exercise, medical care. I want to make sure I'm doing everything right." They spent an hour going over details. Alexander had clearly researched obsessively. He knew more about pregnancy nutrition and prenatal care than Isabel did. But underneath his clinical questions, she could see the barely suppressed emotion. He was excited, terrified, but excited. As Isabel prepared to leave, Alexander stopped her. "Isabel, I need you to understand something. This child, it's not just about continuing my bloodline or my wife's legacy. It's about hope. After Catherine and Emma died, I lost hope. This pregnancy, this child, it's given me a reason to live again." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something in Isabel's chest. "I'll take care of them," she promised. "I promise." The first trimester was brutal. Morning sickness, it should have been called, all-day sickness, plagued Isabel. She struggled to maintain her coursework while dealing with exhaustion, nausea, and the surreal reality of her situation. Her mother's treatment was working. The experimental drug cocktail was shrinking the tumors, giving Lindichin hope for the first time in months. Tommy had been accepted at MIT with a full scholarship that appeared out of nowhere, causing the dance around their apartment with joy. Everything Isabel had hoped for was coming true, but the pregnancy was harder than she'd anticipated. Not just physically, but emotionally. At her 12-week checkup, Dr. Chen performed an ultrasound. "Would you like to hear the heartbeat?" Isabel had planned to say no, to maintain emotional distance, but her mouth betrayed her. "Yes." The sound filled the room, rapid, strong, impossibly real. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A tiny life, growing inside her, utterly dependent on her body and care. Tears streamed down Isabel's face without permission. "That's normal," Dr. Chen said gently. "It's okay to feel connected, Isabel. You're human." But connection was dangerous. This wasn't her child. She couldn't forget that. Except her body didn't understand the distinction. As the weeks passed and her belly began to swell, Isabel felt the reality of pregnancy in ways no contract could prepare her for. This was a person growing inside her, a person she was responsible for, even if only temporarily. At 16 weeks, she felt the first flutter of movement, so subtle she almost missed it, like butterfly wings against her womb. She texted Marcus before she could stop herself. The baby moved. His response came quickly. "Mr. Winters would like to know if you're willing to meet." Isabel stared at the message. They weren't supposed to have ongoing contact. The agreement was clear: minimal interaction, maximum distance. But that flutter had changed something, made it real in a way the contracts and money couldn't. "Yes." Tomorrow, they met at a neutral location, a private room in an upscale restaurant. Alexander looked haggard, like he hadn't been sleeping. He stood when she entered, his eyes immediately dropping to her slightly visible bump. "You're showing." "A little. It's still early." Isabel sat, suddenly self-conscious. "You wanted to see me?" "I wanted to apologize. For asking you to do something I'm not sure I have a right to ask. For treating this like a transaction when it's clearly more complicated." He ran a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about Catherine, about how pregnancy changed her, how connected she felt to Emma even before birth. And I've been asking you to suppress all of that for money. It's not fair. It's what I agreed to. I know, but I'm realizing I don't want you to suffer. I don't know what I want. He looked lost. May I? He gestured to her stomach. Isabel froze, then slowly nodded. Alexander reached across the table, his hand hovering over her belly, clearly asking permission. She took his hand and placed it on the small bump. For a long moment, they sat like that, his hand on her stomach, both of them barely breathing, waiting. Then the flutter came again, stronger this time. Alexander's eyes widened, then filled with tears. That's my child. Yes, alive, growing, because of you, because of both of us. They stayed like that for several minutes, connected by the life between them, until Isabel gently pulled away. We shouldn't do this, she said softly. It makes it harder. I know, but maybe it should be harder. Maybe we shouldn't try to make this emotionless. Alexander looked at her seriously. Would you consider letting me be more involved? Not breaking the contract, but being present for pregnancy? I want to know what's happening. Be there for appointments if you'll allow it. Not as a transaction, but as the child's father. Isabel knew she should say no, should maintain boundaries, keep distance, protect herself from attachment. But looking at Alexander's hopeful, desperate expression, she found herself nodding. Okay, but we need rules. They spent the next hour negotiating a new arrangement. Alexander could attend major appointments. They could communicate about the pregnancy, but there would still be separation after birth. The contract remained valid, the financial terms unchanged. This was about giving Alexander a connection to the pregnancy, not creating a co-parenting relationship. As the second trimester progressed, their dynamic shifted. Alexander attended the 20-week anatomy scan, holding Isabel's hand when the ultrasound revealed a healthy baby girl. A daughter, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Like Emma, Isabel confirmed, squeezing his hand. He wanted to name her Catherine, after his late wife. Isabel thought it was beautiful. But as Alexander became more involved, Isabel felt herself developing feelings she absolutely shouldn't have. It wasn't just about the baby anymore. She was falling for Alexander, for his vulnerability, his fierce love for his unborn daughter, his gratitude and respect toward Isabel. She was pregnant with his child and falling in love with him. It was a disaster waiting to happen. At 24 weeks, Isabel was leaving a prenatal appointment when she was suddenly dizzy, the world tilting. She grabbed a wall, trying to steady herself, but her legs gave out. She woke in a hospital bed, Alexander beside her, holding her hand, looking terrified. What happened? Preeclampsia, he said, voice rough. Your blood pressure spiked. They're monitoring you and the baby. Dr. Chin says if it doesn't stabilize, they might need to deliver early. Panic flooded Isabel. It's too early. Catherine needs more time. You need to be okay, Alexander interrupted fiercely. The baby matters, but so do you, Isabel. Don't you dare sacrifice yourself. That's literally what you're paying me to do. No, I'm paying you to carry my child safely, which includes keeping yourself healthy. Promise me, if the doctors say you're in danger, you'll prioritize yourself. Alexander, promise me. His hand tightened on hers. I can't lose anyone else. I can't lose you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them could address. I promise, Isabel whispered. Fortunately, the preeclampsia stabilized with medication and bed rest. Isabel moved into a private facility where she could be monitored around the clock, with Alexander covering every expense. He visited daily, bringing books, food, conversation. They talked about everything, his childhood, her medical school dreams, his wife's death, her father who'd abandoned them when she was 12. They watched movies on her laptop, played cards, built a friendship that felt both natural and completely impossible. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset through her window, Isabel asked a question that had been burning in her mind for weeks. What happens after Catherine is born? We just stop knowing each other. Alexander was quiet for a long time. That was the agreement. I know what the agreement says. I'm asking what you want. What I want is impossible. Try me. He turned to face her, his expression raw. I want you to be part of her life, part of my life, not as an employee or a surrogate, but as someone who matters. But I can't ask that of you. You have your own future, your own dreams, and our relationship started as a transaction. There's no recovering from that foundation. What if I don't want to recover? What if I want to build something on it? Isabel, I'm in love with you, Alexander. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I know it's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea, but I'm in love with you. And not because of the money or the pregnancy, but because of who you are, how you've shown up, how you care about Catherine, how you see me as more than just a uterus for hire. Alexander's hands cupped her face. You're not a uterus for hire. You're the woman who gave me hope when I had none, who's carrying my daughter with grace and strength, who makes me laugh and challenges me and somehow sees something worthwhile in a broken man. I love you too, Isabel. God help me, I love you. He kissed her then, soft and careful, mindful of her pregnant belly and the monitors surrounding them. It was a kiss full of longing and fear and desperate hope. When they broke apart, both were crying. This is so complicated, Isabel said. Impossibly so, Alexander agreed. The contract. We'll figure out. Together. But figuring out proved more difficult than either anticipated. Marcus Hawthorne was appalled when they disclosed their relationship. This is a legal nightmare, he said, pacing Alexander's penthouse, while Isabel watched from the couch, 32 weeks pregnant and exhausted. The contract specifically prohibits emotional entanglement. If opposing counsel ever found out, they could argue undue influence, coercion. There's no opposing counsel, Alexander interrupted. No one's challenging anything. Not yet. But Isabel, you need to understand, if you and Alexander pursue a relationship, it complicates everything. Custody, rights, the financial arrangement. You could argue he manipulated you, that the power dynamic made genuine consent impossible. I'm not arguing anything, Isabel said firmly. I chose this. All of it. The surrogacy, the relationship, everything. You're 23, pregnant, and financially dependent on Alexander. A court could easily. Marcus. Alexander's voice was steel. We're not litigating this. We're finding a solution. The solution, after days of negotiation, was a new contract. Isabel would still receive the agreed-upon compensation for the surrogacy. But upon birth, she would have the option to remain in Catherine's life with shared custody. The financial arrangement would be separate from any personal relationship. Money she'd already earned, not contingent on staying with Alexander. It was complicated, messy, and probably fraught with legal landmines. It was also the only way forward. At 37 weeks, Isabel went into labor. The delivery was long and difficult. 16 hours of contractions, an epidural that only partially worked, and finally, a healthy baby girl weighing 7 pounds, 3 ounces. When they placed Catherine in Isabel's arms, something fundamental shifted in the universe. She's perfect, Isabel breathed, staring at the tiny face, the dark eyes, the small fists waving in the air. Alexander stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. She looks like her mother, like Catherine. She looks like you too. See her chin? That's yours. For a moment, they were just a family, mother, father, and newborn daughter, despite the complicated circumstances that brought them together. Then Dr. Chin entered with paperwork, and reality intruded. Isabel, we need to discuss postpartum care. And there are some legal documents. The contract completion, parental rights, custody arrangements, all the business that transformed a birth into a transaction. But as Isabel held Catherine and looked at Alexander, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't a transaction anymore. This was her family. The first week after Catherine's birth was a blur of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and the surreal reality of their situation. According to the contract, Isabel should have signed the papers and left the hospital without the baby. Instead, she stayed in Alexander's penthouse, sleeping in the guest room, helping care for Catherine while her body recovered from childbirth. It was temporary, they both told themselves, just until Isabel was fully recovered and they figured out the custody arrangement. But Temporary had a way of becoming permanent. On Catherine's 8th day of life, Alexander found Isabel crying in the nursery at 3 in the morning, the baby finally asleep in her bassinet. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. "I don't know how to leave her," Isabel whispered. "I know what the contract says. I know I agreed to walk away. But Alexander, I can't. I love her so much it physically hurts." Alexander knelt beside her chair. "Then don't leave. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. I love you. You love Catherine. Catherine needs both of us. Why are we torturing ourselves with artificial separation because of a contract we wrote when we didn't understand what we were creating? Because your family will hate me. The media will destroy us. Everyone will think I manipulated you for money. Let them think whatever they want." Alexander took her hands. "Isabel, I've spent 3 years being dead inside. You brought me back to life. You gave me Catherine. You gave me hope. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Your parents will adjust or be cut off. My mother will love Catherine too much to stay away. And my father, well, he'll respect strength, and you're the strongest person I know. I'm terrified. So am I. But I'd rather be terrified together than safe and alone." 2 months later, Isabel moved into the penthouse permanently, not as an employee or a surrogate, but as Alexander's partner and Catherine's mother. The transition was rocky. Alexander's parents, Richard and Margaret Winters, were appalled when they learned the truth. "You paid a college student $10 million to have your baby?" Margaret's voice could have cut glass. "And now you're shacking up with her? Alexander, this looks like I fell in love with an incredible woman who sacrificed her body and 9 months of her life to give me a family," Alexander interrupted. "Yes, Mother, that's exactly what it looks like. Because that's what happened. The optics. I don't care about optics. I care about Catherine and Isabel." Richard Winters studied Isabel with calculating eyes. "What do you want from my son?" "Dad," Alexander started, but Isabel held up a hand. "Nothing I haven't earned," she said evenly. "I fulfilled my contract. The money was paid for services rendered. My relationship with Alexander is separate. If we break up tomorrow, I don't get more money. I get heartbreak in co-parenting arrangements, like any other couple. You're 23 years old, a student. What could you possibly offer my son beyond your uterus?" The cruelty of the question made Alexander surge his feet, but Isabel remained calm. "Love, support, intelligence, partnership, the same things he offers me. And yes, I'm young and still in school, but I'm also a person who sees Alexander as more than his bank account or his name. I see a man who lost everything and is rebuilding, a man who's a devoted father and a good partner. If you can't see that, it's your loss, not ours." The meeting ended tensely, but 3 weeks later, Margaret showed up at the penthouse with baby gifts and a stiff apology. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I watched you with Catherine. You love her. And more importantly, she loves you. That's what matters." Gradually, unexpectedly, Isabel became part of the Winters family. But the outside world was less forgiving. When news of their relationship leaked, an inevitable consequence of Alexander's public profile, the media frenzy was brutal. Billionaire's baby mama, love or gold digger scheme? CEO pays $10 million for surrogate, ends up in relationship. Experts question ethics. Did Alexander Winters buy a family? The articles were vicious, full of speculation and judgment. Isabel's social media was flooded with harassment. People called her a prostitute, a manipulator, a woman who trapped a billionaire with a baby. It got so bad that Isabel stopped leaving the penthouse. She dropped out of school, unable to handle the stares and whispers. Her dream of medical school evaporated under the weight of public scrutiny. "I've destroyed your life," Alexander said one night, finding her crying in the nursery again. "You saved my mother's life. You gave Tommy opportunities he'd never have had. You gave me Catherine. That's not destruction. But medical school was a dream. Catherine is reality, and she's better than any dream I could have imagined." But Isabel wasn't being entirely honest. She missed school desperately. Missed the challenge, the goal, the sense of purpose beyond diapers and feeding schedules. Marcus Hawthorne noticed. During one of his visits to review legal documents, he cornered Isabel in the kitchen. "You're miserable." "I'm fine." "You're a 23-year-old genius hiding in a penthouse because the internet is mean." "That's not fine. What am I supposed to do? I can't go back to school. Everyone knows who I am now." "So study privately. Hire tutors. Take online classes. You don't need a traditional path to become a doctor, Isabel. You need knowledge and determination, both of which you have in abundance." The idea sparked something in Isabel. What if she could continue her education, just differently? She discussed it with Alexander that evening. "I want to keep studying, become a doctor still, but maybe through a non-traditional route. Online programs, private instruction, eventually taking the MCAT and applying to medical schools that might be more understanding." "Yes," Alexander said immediately. "Absolutely. Whatever you need, tutors, resources, time, it's yours. It might take years, longer than a traditional path." So, Catherine needs her mother to be fulfilled, not just present. If medicine is your calling, pursue it. With Alexander's support and Marcus's guidance, Isabel began building a customized medical education. She hired professors for her private lessons, enrolled in online courses from top universities, spent Catherine's nap times buried in anatomy and pharmacology. It was hard, balancing motherhood with intensive study, but it was also fulfilling in a way Isabel hadn't experienced since the pregnancy began. Meanwhile, Catherine grew. First smile, first laugh, first attempt at crawling. She was a happy baby, thriving under the care of two parents who adored her. On Catherine's first birthday, Alexander and Isabel hosted a small party. Tommy flew in from MIT, full of stories about college life. Linda Chin attended, now in remission and healthier than she'd been in years. Even Alexander's parents came, Margaret now fully embracing her granddaughter and grudgingly accepting Isabel. As Isabel watched Catherine demolish her first birthday cake, covered in frosting and giggling with pure joy, she felt Alexander's arm wrap around her waist. "Happy," he murmured. "Terrified," she admitted. "Every day I wake up thinking this is too good to be true, that something will ruin it. Nothing will ruin it. We won't let it." But the universe had other plans. 3 days after the party, a woman named Jennifer Matthews filed a lawsuit against Alexander Winters, claiming he coerced her into a surrogacy arrangement years earlier and hadn't paid as promised. It was a lie. Alexander had never worked with Jennifer Matthews, had no record of any such arrangement. But the lawsuit was filed in a tabloid-friendly court, and the media pounced. Another woman claims Billionaire exploited her. Pattern of abuse? Second surrogacy arrangement gone wrong. Alexander Winters, predator or victim of lies? The lawsuit threatened everything. If a judge believed Matthews' fabricated story, it could open investigations into Alexander's arrangement with Isabel, potentially arguing she'd been coerced too. "This is a shakedown," Marcus explained during an emergency meeting. "Matthews is a known scam artist with 3 previous fraud charges, but she's playing the victim card in media, and juries are sympathetic to women claiming exploitation by powerful men." "So what do we do?" Isabel asked. "We prove the truth." "Which means?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Isabel, we need you to be willing to testify, to explain your arrangement with Alexander publicly. It's the only way to demonstrate that his surrogacy agreement was legitimate, consensual, and properly compensated." Isabel's blood ran cold. "You wanted to stand up in court and explain how Alexander paid me $10 million to have his baby?" "Yes. The media will eviscerate me." "Probably. They'll say I was prostituting myself, that he bought me." "They're already saying that," Alexander interrupted gently. "Isabel, I won't force you to do this. If you want to stay private, we'll find another way. But Marcus is right. Your testimony is our strongest defense." Isabel looked at Catherine, playing on the floor with blocks, oblivious to the storm around her. This beautiful child, born from a transaction that had become so much more. "Okay," Isabel said. "I'll testify." The trial was a media circus. Jennifer Matthews played the victim perfectly. Tears, emotional testimony. claims that Alexander had manipulated her during a vulnerable time. Then Isabel took the stand. Marcus led her through the testimony carefully. The circumstances that led her to accept the surrogacy offer, the contracts, the medical procedures, the payments, the development of her relationship with Alexander. "Ms. Chun," Marcus asked, "did you feel coerced at any point?" "No. I felt desperate, which is different. I needed money for my mother's cancer treatment. Alexander offered a way to get that money through a legitimate service. Was it unusual? Yes, but it was also transparent, legal, and consensual. Did Mr. Winters pressure you to enter a romantic relationship? No. If anything, I pursued him. I fell in love during pregnancy, told him first, and we navigated the complications together." The opposing counsel's cross-examination was brutal. "Isn't it true, Miss Chun, that you were a poor college student when you met Mr. Winters?" "Yes. And now you live in his penthouse, have access to his wealth, and parent the child you were originally supposed to give up?" "Yes." "Isn't it possible that you manufactured a relationship to maintain access to his money?" Isabel met the lawyer's eyes steadily. "No, because I already had access to the money. The $10 million was mine regardless of whether we stayed together. I didn't need a relationship for financial security. I chose a relationship because I love Alexander and I love Catherine. But you must admit, the arrangement was transactional." "It started as a transaction," Isabel agreed. "Two people in desperate circumstances, making a mutually beneficial arrangement. But it became something more. And that's not manipulation. That's humanity. People connect. Circumstances change. What began as business became family." In the end, the jury sided with Alexander. Matthews' story fell apart under scrutiny, her previous fraud charges weighing heavily. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice and ordered Matthews to pay legal fees. But the damage was done. The trial had exposed every intimate detail of Alexander and Isabel's arrangement. The media had a field day with the testimony, twisting it into sordid tales of billionaires buying babies and women. For weeks, Isabel couldn't leave the penthouse without cameras and shouted questions. Her relationship with her mother became strained. Linda was grateful for the cancer treatment, but uncomfortable with how it had been obtained. Tommy defended his sister, but faced harassment at MIT. One night, as Isabel lay awake staring at the ceiling, she wondered if the money had been worth the cost. Alexander found her on the balcony at 2 a.m., wrapped in a blanket against the early spring chill. "Can't sleep? Can't stop thinking about everything we've been through, everything we've lost." "What have we lost?" "Privacy, normalcy, dignity, maybe. And what have we gained?" Isabel looked through the glass doors at Catherine's nursery, where their daughter slept peacefully. Everything that matters. Exactly. Alexander wrapped his arms around her. "The media will move on. They always do. But Catherine will always be our daughter. You'll always be the woman I love. Those things are permanent. The rest is noise. Expensive noise. I'm a billionaire. I can afford it." Despite everything, Isabel laughed. Dr. Isabel Chin Winters graduated from Columbia Medical School at the top of her class, fulfilling the dream she'd thought was lost. Her path had been unconventional. Started with online courses while raising an infant, eventually enrolling in medical school when Catherine started kindergarten. But she'd done it. Alexander sat in the audience with 5-year-old Catherine, both beaming with pride as Isabel accepted her diploma. "That's my mommy," Catherine announced loudly, causing people around them to laugh. "Yes, it is," Alexander said, kissing his daughter's head. "You're brilliant, incredible mommy." At the graduation reception, Linda Chun embraced her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so proud of you, baby. You did it. We did it," Isabel corrected. "All of us together." Tommy, now graduated from MIT and working as a software engineer, raised his champagne glass. "To my sister, who's smarter and more stubborn than anyone I know, and to the weirdest origin story any family has ever had." "Amen to that," Marcus Hawthorne added, now more friend than lawyer. though legally, I'm required to remind everyone that the surrogacy arrangement was completely legitimate and... Marcus, Isabel interrupted, laughing. You're off duty. Stop lawyering. That evening, back at the penthouse that had become home, Isabel tucked Catherine into bed. Mommy, tell me the story again, Catherine requested, about how you and Daddy met. It was Catherine's favorite bedtime story, though the version Isabel told was carefully edited for a 5-year-old. Once upon a time, there was a daddy who wanted a baby very much, and a mommy who needed help saving her own mommy. So they made an agreement. The daddy would help the mommy's mommy get better, and the mommy would help give the daddy a baby. They thought it would be simple business. But something magical happened. What? Catherine asked, even though she knew the answer. They fell in love. And when the baby was born, a beautiful little girl with dark hair and bright eyes, they became a family. Not the family they planned, but the family they needed. And they lived happily ever after. They lived very happily, with some complicated parts, lots of love, and the best little girl in the whole world. Catherine giggled, accepting her goodnight kisses. In the living room, Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to Isabel. Dr. Chinwinter's. Has a nice ring to it. It does, Isabel agreed, settling beside him on the couch. Though I never thought I'd get here. I knew you would, from the moment you walked into that conference room, so determined and terrified and brilliant. I knew you were extraordinary. You knew I was desperate. That too. But desperation and extraordinariness aren't mutually exclusive. He took her hand. Isabel, I need to ask you something. Should I be worried? Maybe. Alexander set down his wine and pulled out a small velvet box. We did everything backward. Contract before relationship. Baby before commitment. But I'd like to do this one thing the traditional way. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. Isabel Chun, will you marry me? Not because of contracts or money or Catherine, though she's thrilled about the prospect of being a flower girl, but because I love you, because you're my partner, my best friend, and the person I want to spend every remaining day of my life beside. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. We met because you paid me $10 million to carry your child. True, not the most romantic origin story. And the media still calls me a gold digger at least once a month. Also true. And your mother still makes passive-aggressive comments about my age. She does, but she loves you anyway. And despite all of that, the complications, the judgment, the absolute insanity of how we started, I wouldn't change a single thing, because it brought us here. Isabel took the ring from the box. So, yes, Alexander Winters, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her thoroughly, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. From the hallway, Catherine's voice called out, Are you kissing? I want to see. They broke apart, laughing, as their daughter ran into the room in her pajamas. We're getting married, Alexander told her. Scooping her up, Your mommy said yes. Good. Then we could be a family forever and ever. We already are, Isabel said, pulling both of them into her arms. We already are. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony in the same penthouse where they'd first negotiated the surrogacy contract. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus officiated, having obtained certification for precisely this purpose. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate what is possibly the most legally complicated love story I've ever witnessed. Laughter rippled through the small crowd, but it's also one of the most genuine. Alexander and Isabel found each other in desperate circumstances. They made an arrangement that should have been simple transaction. Instead, they found partnership, love, and family. They did everything wrong by conventional standards, and somehow created something absolutely right. When Alexander and Isabel exchanged rings, there were 2, the one he gave her today, and the one he'd given her years ago, the day Catherine was born. This ring, Alexander said, touching the earlier one, represents a promise I made when you were carrying Catherine, to honor you, respect you, and recognize that you were giving me something priceless. This ring, he slipped on the wedding band, represents a promise I make today, to love you partner with you, and spend every day trying to deserve the gift of your presence in my life. Isabel's vows were simpler. I came to you for money. I stayed for love. And I promised to keep choosing this family for the rest of our lives. As they kissed, Catherine cheered, and their small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was intimate, family and close friends only. No media, no publicity, just the people who mattered. Later, as they danced, Isabel whispered to Alexander, "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if I hadn't seen that flyer?" "Every day, but I prefer not to imagine a world without you in it. Even though I was a broke college student you had to pay to get what you needed, especially because of that, you could have walked away at any point. The money was guaranteed, but you stayed. You chose me, chose us, when it would have been easier to leave. That's worth infinitely more than $10 million. Speaking of which, Isabel said with a mischievous smile, "I've been thinking about what to do with that money. It's yours. Do whatever you want. I want to start a foundation for people facing impossible medical costs, so no one else has to make the choice between survival and dignity, between saving their family and preserving themselves." Alexander pulled back to look at her, eyes shining. "That's perfect. You're perfect." "I'm really not, but I'm trying to be worthy of this second chance. You gave me a second chance when I had none. Everything good in my life now, Catherine, our family, hope, came from you, so if anything, I'm trying to be worthy of you." They swayed together, surrounded by family and love, as Catherine danced with her grandparents and Tommy made jokes with Marcus. It was messy and complicated and unconventional. It was absolutely perfect, because sometimes the best families are the ones built from desperate circumstances, impossible choices, and the willingness to see possibility where others see only transaction. Alexander Winters had paid $10 million to a poor student to carry his child. What happened next was that they fell in love, built a family, and proved that sometimes the most priceless things in life start with a price tag, but end with something worth infinitely more than money could ever buy. Their daughter grew up knowing her origin story, not the sanitized fairy tale version, but the truth, that her parents met because of need, stayed because of love, and created with hope during the darkest time of both their lives. And Catherine learned the most important lesson of all. Families aren't defined by how they start, but by how they choose each other every single day, despite the complications. 5 years became 10, then 20. Isabel built her foundation into a nationwide network, helping thousands of families facing medical debt. Alexander expanded his business, but spent more time with family, having learned that empire building was meaningless without people to share it with. Catherine became a bioethicist, studying the intersection of medicine, money, and morality, inspired perhaps by her own unusual beginning. And on their 25th wedding anniversary, as they stood on the penthouse balcony where they'd shared so many crucial conversations, Alexander asked Isabel the question he'd wondered for years. If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, all the judgment and complications, would you still sign that contract? Isabel didn't hesitate, in a heartbeat, because that contract didn't just give me $10 million. It gave me you, Catherine, and a life beyond anything I imagined. Some people spend their whole lives looking for purpose. I found mine in the most unexpected place, a business transaction that became the greatest love story of my life. Ours, Alexander corrected, pulling her close. The greatest love story of our lives. And somewhere in the apartment, Catherine laughed at something on her phone. Their grandchildren played, and the family that began with a contract continued writing their story, one day, one choice, one moment of love at a time.